Welcome to the Hope for the Journey podcast, a weekday wellness tips program presented by Dr. Denise Marie, Third Order Carmelite. Dr. Denise is a professionally qualified clinical psychologist, health and wellness professor and coach, counselor, plus medicinal herbs educator. Each Hope for the Journey podcast features a well-being key from Dr. Denise, helping you meet your self-care needs for living well. Listener discretion is advised because this and other Hope for the Journey episodes may contain discussions surrounding behavioral health problems and other actual potentially triggering topics.
Hello and good day, everyone. Welcome back to Hope for the Journey. I am hoping that things are coming along okay for you today. My name is Dr. Denise, and on today's episode of the podcast, our topic is separating the person from the behavior, which is a relational self-care key for living well. I would like to begin today's discussion with a question for you. Do you find yourself struggling with one or more difficult persons in your life? If you are struggling in this way, I would be sure that you understand how difficult persons can push our buttons by the way they act in undesirable ways. And difficult persons can often be categorized into types. So I'm wondering what kind of challenging personalities you might think I am speaking about. For example, the bully, or the slacker. How about the chatterbox, or the cold shoulder person? Maybe even the whiner or complainer. And I would suspect that you would be able to come up with other types of negative people that you have found yourself in struggles with. And while we do not like their behavior, we may find in dealing with them that we ourselves become preoccupied with how angry we are that they aren't behaving the way they should. We can end up being preoccupied with how angry we are that we haven't reached the goals that we have had in the matters relating to them. We might find ourselves really thinking how much we do not like the person who is difficult. We also might find ourselves not considering that the person's behavior obliges any further action on our part. Or we might actually end up deeming the difficult person as a bad person for life. So then, what is the best way of dealing with the difficult persons we find in our lives? I like to recommend a particular major principle for dealing with the one or more difficult persons in our lives. And I call it separating the person from the behavior. This particular operating principle has many advantages. It provides room to do a good number of things for the common good. And this is what I would like to review at this point. The value of going with the major principle of separating the person from the behavior. So it gives us room to, one, be aware of emotions, especially the uncomfortable ones that have been stirred up in relating to the difficult person. Then you can avoid being reactively unpleasant or begrudging, and instead collect yourself to respond thoughtfully and in good timing. Also, separating person from the behavior enables you to turn your attention to providing solutions, to problem solving, rather than focus on the person's problems. Separating the person from the behavior happens best when we can specify the aspects of a person's conduct which actually bother us. For example, the slacker's lack of work is unacceptable, and certainly either you or I can recognize that they need to act instead of slacking. Separating the person from the behavior enables you to understand and better accept the reality of their difficulty, even though it would be best for the difficult persons to act differently. In following this operating principle of separating the person from the behavior, it is important to determine any limits that you might have. For example, to be more ready to directly ask someone like the cold shoulder do you have a problem with me? Then you would be benefiting from having had a time of self-reflection before engaging in the rest of the conversation with the cold shoulder type. Separating the person from the behavior involves also keeping in your mind the freedom that you still have to succeed in the thorny situation that you're having with the negative person. For example, it is important to document the actions that a bully has been involved in and seek help to get the bullying behavior to stop. Also, separating the person from the behavior is a way of helping you to calm down when you're under the pressures that are caused by the challenging personality you're dealing with. For example, it is best to be calm when you are seeking a moment to talk privately to the chatterbox about his listening more and talking less. In working towards separating the person from the behavior, you can better come up with strategies to handle the person's behavior. For example, setting limits with the whiner or complainer, emphasizing the positives when you are working alongside a whiner or a complainer. Also, in focusing on separating the person from the behavior, you can let the other person know nicely and politely when he is crossing over boundaries that he shouldn't have. For example, behavioral boundaries or ways of talking that shouldn't be happening. In this way, one or two difficult persons will know what you will permit versus what you deem unacceptable. Then, of course, it would be important to consistently make sure that these boundaries, these standards you have, remain in place for the future. In trying to separate the person from the behavior, you can also be more ready to ask God for the person's behavior to change for the better, bringing it to God's hands to handle. You can also ask God for the challenging person to grow into the person that God created him to be. And if the person with the challenging personality won't make the changes that are really needed, well, then you can simply accept that it is not in your power to make the difficult person different. And you can go on to limit your contact with the challenging person or even avoid that person as needed so that you can get the negativity that is brought to you out of your life. And when you try to separate the person from the behavior, you will find yourself enjoying your freedom to be yourself despite what you cannot change. The goal of separating the person from the behavior is for you to behave in truth so that you get what is needed from a quote unquote business point of view, while at the same time you are lovingly and kindly managing the situation with the person. In other words, the operating principle is to be hard on the issues, yet soft on the difficult person. Overall, you can tell that it is possible to separate the person from the issue. So it is worth starting the conversation with the person having the challenging personality and see how it goes from there, hopefully to a good end. And of course, all of your efforts would be in service of solidifying your relational well-being, which will of course have the consequence of a more abundant life for you in general. Next up on today's subject matter is a look at two people who recognized how being able to separate the person from the issue when one is dealing with a difficult person is a worthwhile principle to follow. First, I wish to point to the influential American poet from the early 20th century, Robert Frost. He was known for being honest, realistic, and insightful about life, even when the personal or relational matters he was addressing were complicated. With respect to people who are offensive to others, Robert Frost said, quote, "If one by one we counted people out for the least sin, it wouldn't take us long to get so we had no one left to live with. For to be social is to be forgiving." End quote. And the other person I wish to bring your attention to is Dr. Gloria Jean Watkins. Dr. Gloria Jean was an African American author from Kentucky, a theorist, an educator, and a social critic during her lifetime. Dr. Gloria defined love as, quote, "the will to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth," end quote. And she wrote that for her, quote, "forgiveness and compassion are always linked. How do we hold people accountable for wrongdoing and yet at the same time remain in touch with their humanity enough to believe in their capacity to be transformed?" End quote. Both Robert Frost and Dr. Gloria Jean Watkins understood that separating the person from the behavior is a valuable relational orientation for better living. For this time in the podcast, I wish to assist your separating the person from the behavior through a piece of music. Regardless of what difficult people say or do, or how you don't feel or feel, about them in your life, God calls us to love them anyway. So the song I am presenting for you now is called Love People. On YouTube, I found it performed by Chris Tomlin, one of the writers, and featuring Jimmy Allen. I will read a number of the lyrics of Love People I found online, words that are especially meaningful for our subject matter of today. It conquers hate. It don't see color, just sees heart. We need each other. It's 4 little letters, 1 little word. If we all did it better, be a lot less hurt. If we love people. Love people. We all need love, people. Underneath the surface, everybody's the same. Everything that could divide us, can't we all set that aside and just love people? Love people. We didn't all come up the same way, but we're all in need of the same grace. On our own, we won't make it far. If we ain't together, we're falling apart. So love people. Love people. Oh, yeah, love people. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is all we really got. Never fails, never leaves. Faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love, people. Love people. We all need love, people. Love is patient. Love is kind. From listening to these song lyrics, a desire to love makes it easier to separate the person from the behavior. And God knows how this can not only increase your relational wellness, but also advance your overall well-being. At this point, I would like to zoom in on some extra possible care for you and your overall wellness by presenting the following: 3 health foods and plants that could aid your mental focus for separating the difficult person from the behavior, which is our relational self-care key of the day. Just please call to mind my words about going over these 3 items with your doctor before putting them into your healthcare regimen. I present this trio of foods and plants as complementary to body and soul functioning. First, I would like to mention sage. And I mean a little, though not too much sage. This herb is known to have nerve protective activity, such as aiding attention and improving cognitive functioning. Plus, sage promotes a feeling of calm. Then I can suggest you consider taking cacao or the raw, unprocessed organic cocoa bean, such as cacao powder made for a drink. Cacao increases circulation, provides a short-term boost to the brain, and enhances thinking as well as adapting to stress. Also, you do have the option of using hawthorn. Hawthorn adds energy, helps blood circulation in the brain, and actually improves the sense of calm, hope, and love. Yet, please recall my advice to discuss such foods and plants with your doctor to ensure they are a good fit to your individual health situation. Otherwise, it pleases me to underline sage, cacao, and hawthorn as gifts of nature that can advance the well-being of both your body and soul. Today, I also wish to share this brief item with you, a post-it note I have written to encourage you to continue efforts towards separating the person from the behavior. So I hope you will take to heart these words from a friend, actually from St. Luke chapter 6, verses 32 to 36. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Jesus goes further and issues this challenge to his followers. But love your enemies, do good to them. It is not enough for us to love the persons that are easier for us to love. We are also called to love those people who are hard to love. For our podcast agenda next, I plan to share about a mobile app that can assist you on your journey to becoming the most kind version of yourself. This particular app is called Live Different. Discover what living a life of kindness looks like for you. Live Different was developed by a Canadian charitable organization of the same name. Live Different is interested in advancing a lifestyle of compassion toward others, self, and nature. Their app, quote, aims to make its users grow and practice, end quote, better relational living. The content description for this easy-to-use app underlines its goal to assist users to, quote, stay motivated to make a difference and spread a little kindness every day. Access the Live Different hub, filled with inspiring stories, news, and videos. Connect in a judgment-free digital space. Track your progress. Choose among several challenges to help practice kind actions. Create groups and therefore invite friends, family to do the challenges together. The option to share your progress and send and receive kudos to your friends, end quote. Further, going beyond this Live Different mobile app I learned about, you can keep in mind that there are other tools for wellness to discover in our Hope for the Journey podcast resource center, located on Instagram at Cause for Hope. And as a last point to complete this evening's talking points, I wanted to emphasize how it's been my pleasure to develop this podcast episode for you today on our subject of separating the person from the behavior, to emphasize the value of this relational self-care key for you. And please know that I personally wish you more hope for the journey of greater well-being.
The Hope for the Journey program airs weekday evenings from 7:45 p.m. to 8:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Instagram and YouTube. Dr. Denise thanks you for listening to her Community Wellness podcast and wishes you to keep in mind that there is cause for hope of more well-being.